That's an interesting thing. And don't you, Grady, actually have a story? I've never like woken up and almost not woken up from a low blood sugar.
Oh yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
you want to share what waking up with low blood sugar could be like?
Yeah. So I mean I wake up with low blood sugar all the time, but
Don't
um
tell the kids that.
yeah, I know.
That's what the diabetes are becoming, the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So the only time I've ever had like a low blood sugar quote unquote event is during sleep. Because when I get low, when I'm awake, like I keep a lot of my awareness very well, even despite getting really, really low. Like I can get really, really low and still be able to function at a pretty high level.
Mhm.
So I've never had a problem while I'm awake. However, when you're asleep, a little bit harder to react. So when I quit football, and for people who haven't been listening, I played on the line, so I was a lot bigger back then. My diet was absolutely horrible. I was literally eating until I wanted to puke every single meal. So I was eating just a ton. And eventually decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. So I quit football and then started eating like a normal human being
Mhm.
and therefore started losing lots of weight. And at the same time, my insulin or obviously my blood sugars were coming down quite a bit. And so through that process, I was having lots and lots of lows very, very frequently. And like we've talked about in the past on previous podcasts, it's almost like a you have that threshold of low, and that threshold can change. Like just because you typically feel low at 60 doesn't mean you always feel that way. If you start having lots and lots of high blood sugars, you're going to start feeling low maybe around 80. And the more that goes up, the more your threshold of feeling low goes up. Same thing with going down. So if you constantly are having all these lows, your threshold to feel low starts to get lower, lower, lower. And so that's what was happening with me is, I wouldn't feel really, really low, like, okay, I need to drink something until about like 50, 40 maybe.
Oh wow.
Like I would
40.
still have some symptoms, like maybe around 60, but it wasn't like super bad where I'm like, oh, I really need to go check something. It'd be like kind of at that threshold, of like, it's probably not too bad. And so
Mhm.
so as a result, like I was still getting lows at nights, and things like that, and waking up just like I normally do. And but it was just happening for a long period of time. So I can't tell you, it's been so far removed. I can't tell you how long this was going on, but it had to have been at least around 6 months, maybe not quite that long, but it was several months that this was going on. So my threshold was getting lower and lower. And we went to like my cousin's graduation. So we went on vacation to Colorado essentially,
Mhm.
and went hiking with my cousins. Like one of the nights we were there, and blood sugar got low during the hike. Obviously, drank a lot of juice. Then ate a bunch when I got home, and we got home at fairly late at night. And of course, we were with the cousins, so we stayed up pretty late too. And went to bed. We were supposed to go golfing the next morning. And luckily, there wasn't enough rooms in the house for me to sleep on a bed. So I slept on the couch in the living room, and the living room was right next to the kitchen. So everybody's going to see me when they wake up and go eat breakfast,
Yeah.
which was a good thing because, I was supposed to go golfing with them that day. And I'm not a person that really like doesn't go and do things if I'm too tired. Like I will wake up and go golfing, or I will wake up and do whatever everybody else is doing. I'm not one of those people like, oh, I'm too tired, I'm not going to go. Like I'm going to go. And so essentially what was happening is they were trying to wake me up for breakfast. Wasn't really happening. It was kind of like one of those things where you have those people that are just in that really tired state and they're just like, moaning and whatnot. And, um, and so they just thought I was really tired. So they
Mhm.
just kept going through the day. They're about ready to leave to go golfing. And my uncle's like to my dad, he's like, I think you should probably check on Grady. Like I don't think something's right. So then they like really tried to wake me up, and I was still in that like zombie state of like
Sure.
not really with it. And they're like, this is not good. So then they tried checking checking my blood sugar. Keep in mind, I literally have no memory of it, and or at least of what they were doing in this at this time. And so like I'm not even with it at all. And so they're
Wow.
trying to check my blood sugar, but like apparently I was like fighting them, even though like he's like, because like at the time I was still a big guy, and like I was
Mhm.
much
Just pushing
stronger
them
than
off.
most.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You're just
I was
like,
much
get off
stronger
me.
than
Yeah,
most of them.
yeah.
However, like I was so out of it, and plus I mean my blood sugar was so low that they're like they could literally just put my hand push my arm down with like a finger. um and so they just like held me down and tried checking my blood sugar, and I don't know if they couldn't figure it out or what, but essentially they tried to get me to drink some juice and couldn't get me to drink juice. So then they stuck me with the glucagon pin, and eventually I came out of it. But like they got me into a chair, and then
What was the sugar? Do you remember?
it was like I think by the time we were able to check it, it was like in the 30s, but
Oh
I
wow.
think it was much lower.
And you weren't waking up like you were a zombie. Like you had no
Yeah,
memory of this.
no memory of it
Wow.
all. I just remember like sitting in the chair because I was in the couch sleeping, and that's where like all this took place. And then I remember sitting in the chair, all of a sudden looking around and kind of coming to like I remember my eyes were open, and then all of a sudden like my brain finally was like the reality comes
Mhm.
right at me and hits me right in the face, and I'm like I started looking around, what happened? And so they tell me that whole story. And then
Wow.
so obviously that was kind of a big wake up call. I'm like, all right, I really need to change my settings for my basal rate like
Hmm.
drastically. But then it ended up happening again like a week or two later with
Where they had to use the glucagon?
yeah, where they had to use glucagon. I didn't wake up, or
Really? I didn't know
yeah.
that part.
Yeah, so and this time it was just my mom that was home.
Hmm.
And my mom doesn't do well in
High
pressure
pressure.
situations like that.
I can see that about your mom.
Yeah, so she was like my dad had gone to work, and so she was like trying to get the needle the needle out and put it in and everything. And eventually she like couldn't do it because
Hmm.
she's just too much stress. So she called my dad. He came and he was able to do it. And so I woke back up and whatever. But afterwards, we looked, and the needle to put in to the vial of glucagon was just completely bent backwards.
Oh, nice.
So it wasn't. But then eventually we finally got that railed in and just like drastically like cut the basil like in half, and then it was still a little bit high, so we had to cut it down and leave him a little bit more. um
So
but
I,
yeah.
I want to highlight a couple things about that story, right? So leading up to that event, not the second one, but the first one, you were traveling in someplace new, which is
Mm-hmm.
a different environment, which can make a diabetic. Um, if you're not familiar with the situation, it's just a little harder to control your blood sugar.
Yeah,
Like,
there's just a lot more variables, a lot more
mhm,
chaos
mhm.
in your
So
life.
you're number one, you're in a more chaotic environment overall.
Mm-hmm.
You were hiking all day and fighting low blood sugars all day.
Yep.
So if you're hiking and doing that type of zone two movement and more cardiovascular movement, you will have a temporary change in your insulin sensitivity, and you'll have more GLUT4 translocation and more ability to use insulin. So whatever insulin you have in your body will be more efficient, and therefore use the sugar in your blood faster and have a higher chance of low blood sugar just because
Mm-hmm.
of the activity you're doing, right?
Yep.
So number two, you're doing activities all day, and the third thing was just that you been saying screw it and not changing your basal rates and just like comfortable with lows, too comfortable with lows,
Mm-hmm.
and which created a perfect storm of already kind of towing the line most nights anyways, that just created this, you were about to pass out. Like this is how type 1's pass away and die.
Yes. Yes.
Like this is like the amount of overuse of insulin while sleep or drunk or whatever. Like this is when it becomes a really serious condition that's
Mm-hmm.
not you don't mess around with.
Yeah.
And luckily, you said you were on the couch, and then opposed to being in a room with the door shut,
Yep.
right? And that's why living alone as a diabetic can be scary, or moving away from your folks if you are a teenager can be scary, or like I said, just being by yourself can be scary if you don't have roommates
Yeah.
or some kind of partner that you're with. For those reasons, that can't catch you. Like I remember, there was like a day, I can't remember if you were sick or what, when we were living together. I hadn't seen you for a while, and then I like just opened the door, make sure like you're not just rotting away
Yeah.
in your bed being diabetic, to try to bring light to a serious matter.
Yeah.